Always a bridesmaid, Lieutenant Governor. But I'm grateful Leslie made the phone call. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share a few words with you, and I know what's on your mind because I decided to do something a little bit differently. I actually asked you what you wanted me to talk about. And this turned out to be a huge mistake. I will never do this again. Literally thousands of you decided to take up the call. I will not go into detail about what many of you said, but let's just say most of it cannot be repeated in public. Many of you made the point that it really doesn't matter what the hell you say, we're not going to remember it anyway. Someone said, this one hurt. This one hurt me a lot. Someone said, not again. You spoke at my community college graduation. And it was terrible. Others were at least a little more friendly. They said, where the hell's your wife? She's a hell of a lot better speaker. At least that one was closer to home. May I suggest that it got a little racy, I'll admit it, some of these. But this one, well, this was going to start out nice. They said, may I suggest you give your speech without a shirt on. I was thinking, that's what I was thinking. I was starting to feel, you know, my spirits were lifted. Until I read on. Said, not because we won't be repulsed, but it will simply be a more interesting conversation than whatever you're going to say after the ceremony's done. There were a few legitimate ones, I gotta tell you. You know what? I was surprised by this. They said, can you just please tell them that it's still okay to live with your parents? How many of you are still living with your parents? Man, I know the economy's tough. And here was the best one of all. This one you know is the best one of all. It says, no matter, just tell them this, no matter how big you get, no matter how far you go, always remember to call your mother. Good advice. Good advice. Well, I know I'm the only thing standing between you and the conferral degree, so the other advice was you better keep this short because if you keep talking, I'm out of here. So let me do my best. I was going to say all this stuff, but I'll pick up. There were two other themes. There were actually 5 or 6, but there were 2 other I thought important themes that came through in the crowdsourced speech that I'm about to give. That was the importance of diversity. And you heard a little of that from Eduardo and Jonathan and Peter reinforced that. So I want to begin there because I think it's a profoundly important point. And you can't be here in SF State, you can't be here in San Francisco without thinking about the following. I don't know if you're like me, but it can get pretty damn depressing waking up and turning on the TV every day and listening to the radio and the news. Where literally nations and people are being torn apart because of racial and religious and ethnic controversies that are fueling fanaticism and fueling terror. But think about this. Think about where we are. Think about all of you. Here we are in San Francisco, one of the most diverse cities, in one of the most diverse regions, in the most diverse state, California, in the world's most diverse democracy, the United States of America. And I heard Bill Clinton literally say this a week ago. He said, the world looks to us, to you, to see that it's possible to live together, to advance together, and prosper together across every conceivable and imaginable limit. What makes San Francisco State not just good, but great. What makes this city not just good, but great. At our best, we don't just tolerate our diversity, we celebrate our diversity. It's a powerful point. Sure, we can celebrate all those interesting differences, but at the end of the day, Peter made this point, at the end of the day, we unite around our common humanity. Dr. King was right. We are all bound together by a web of mutuality. We are all in this together. It's about communitarianism. It's about reconciling those differences. Number two, it just seems appropriate after I got all the advice to, well, just say what Steve Jobs said. That ain't even fair. Underneath all of your comments and suggestions was a question about leadership. You guys all seem starved for heroes. But it was interesting when I went through all your comments, it struck me that you were focusing on titles. You were focusing on being something in order to do something. And I thought you guys got it all wrong. Think about this. I just finally saw that movie Selma. It took me a while. It's a wonderful movie. But it's interesting. It reminded me, you know, the most transformational leaders in our history had a few things in common. Think about Dr. King. Think about Martin Luther King. We didn't just celebrate a year ago that March on Washington celebrating former President Martin Luther King. We celebrated an extraordinary leader. We don't celebrate out here in California former Governor Cesar Chavez Day. We don't celebrate the life and times of a former Prime Minister by the name of Gandhi. It's interesting, isn't it? Remember when Nelson Mandela was getting sick a year and a half, 2 years ago, and folks were lamenting he was back in hospital, in and out of hospital. It kept saying on the screens and all those cable shows, it so often said, leader Nelson Mandela re-hospitalized. It rarely said ex-president Nelson Mandela re-hospitalized. I remember graduating a few years ago, and at the time there was a remarkable leader, by last name of Havel, something called the Velvet Revolution. He became president of Czechoslovakia. And it's interesting, he wrote extensively how becoming president de-geniused him. He talked about the constraints of office. And it got me thinking, what do Havel, Mandela, King, and Gandhi, what do they all have in common at the peak of their influence? At the peak of their influence. Think 1988, 85, 59. Pick a date with Gandhi. 1919, 20, 21. I don't know the exact date. Think about two things they had in common. Well, you know one of them if you're students of history. One of them was jail time. I'm not recommending that. I'm just suggesting a point. The other thing was they exercised their moral authority. They didn't wait around to be something to do something. We could go on and talking about the life of Martin Luther King, but I bet some of you would struggle to tell me 2 or 3 things he did outside the Constitution in his one term as president, but you could go on and talk about his transformational leadership.